I'm here to talk about the Knicks 113-104 loss to the Toronto Raptors. Now, in this video, I'm going to give you my two biggest takeaways from the game, and then I'm going to go player by player and give you my thoughts on their performance throughout the game. So if you like this video, do me a solid, smash that like button. Also, make sure you're subscribed and make sure you have notifications turned on. That way you're notified whenever I drop new content. So with that being said, let's get right into my first two takeaways. One of my biggest takeaways is the fact that this team got stagnant on offense and got extremely sloppy with the ball in the second half. Now, in this game, we entered halftime with a 4-point lead, and to start the game, it looked like the offense was really clicking. We had Julius Randle have an offensive explosion in the first quarter. He went off for 18 points, 5 or 6 from the field, 4 or 5 from the three-point line, and he also had 3 assists to boot. And of those 3 assists, 2 of them went to RJ Barrett, 1 was to Evan Fournier. And those were kind of his running mates in the first quarter because RJ chipped in with 8 points and Evan Fournier chipped in with 6. But after that, the offense did not have that same, magic that we saw in the first quarter. And I think if you look at some of the stats from half to half, it's pretty glaring. For example, the Knicks had 15 assists and 6 turnovers in the first half. But in the second half, we only had 5 assists compared to 10 turnovers. So if you look at that assist to turnover ratio and how much it swayed from the first half to the second half, you can see that we weren't moving the rock, we weren't sharing the ball, and we were giving it up to the opposing team. And we had some very bad turnovers in that game. Julius Randle was a little nonchalant with the rock. He gave it up on a few times. RJ Barrett had a few bad turnovers as well. And I think as a team, we really didn't handle the basketball with care, and it contributed to the Toronto Raptors being able to pull back to get closer in that second half and eventually establish a lead and beat us throughout the game. Now, my second biggest takeaway is the fact that this small ball lineup got abused by the Toronto Raptors. Just to give you a little perspective, the game was 77-72 with 5 minutes to go when Thibodeau deployed the small ball lineup. That's with Julius Randle at center and Obi Toppin at power forward. And when this happened, the Knicks, we allowed the Raptors to penetrate, and we really had a lot of difficulty trying to recover and contest threes. And it allowed the Toronto Raptors to go on a run in that third quarter. Like I said, the game was 77-72 with 5 minutes to go in the third. And by the time we put another big man in to switch up the small ball lineup, I think it was Jericho Sims that came in with about 14 seconds to go. The game was at 91-79. So you look at that type of run, the fact that the Toronto Raptors were able to extend the lead to 12, to go from a 5-point lead to go to a 12-point lead. And at that point, I think the game was pretty much out of reach, especially when you looked at how the Knicks were performing offensively. I mean, you had some bright spots in that second half like RJ Barrett, but you look at the rest of the team. I mentioned Julius Randle. He had 18 points in the first quarter, but he only ended with 22 points for the remaining portion of the game. So he wasn't hitting his shots in the second half. And so when you look at how the Toronto Raptors were able to create this type of lead in the third quarter, and the fact that the Knicks weren't flowing and we weren't gelling offensively, it was going to be hard for us to try to mount a comeback, especially with the way that the Toronto Raptors were playing defense out there. And let me just give you, if you want to talk about the way the Toronto Raptors were playing defense, they were kind of playing our game plan. They beat us with our game plan. They played solid defense, and they were able to knock down their threes at key points in the game. And that's really what allowed them to put their foot on our necks and get the W. But let me just go through a few plays that happened while the small ball lineup was out there, just to show you how they got attacked by the Toronto Raptors. So the very first play we had run against us when we deployed that small ball lineup, first thing the Toronto Raptors were able to do, they were able to single out Obi and get a OG Anunoby alley-oop to convert. The very next play, they were able to get Zvi a wide open three that Obi was unable to close out. Next play after that, OG Anunoby attacked Obi once again. When we had the small ball lineup, they definitely tried to attack Obi early and often. So So the third play, OG Anunoby was able to convert a mid-range with OB defending. The very next play, FVV, Fred VanVleet, was able to knock down a three with RJ defending. Then we had OG Anunoby was able to corral an offensive rebound and put back. So he was able to feast in the paint with the fact that we didn't have a big man out there. So he got an offensive rebound and was able to put it back in. And then another play was that Fred VanVleet was able to penetrate, get into the paint, and I believe it was Boucher who he was able to find in the paint for an easy basket. So as you can see, while that small ball lineup was in, the Toronto Raptors were still able to knock their three-pointers down. So us going small really didn't help too much in trying to defend the three-point line. And, you know, we also were giving up buckets in the paint. So I think this stretch of the game is where things really got out of reach for the New York Knicks. And if the coaching staff probably would have did a little bit something different and maybe tried to throw something else out there, it could have helped. But I think the small ball lineup was out there for far too long. It wasn't effective, and that's what really lost us this game. So now let me get into the portion of the show where I talk about these players' performance throughout the game. So first person we're going to start with is RJ Barrett, because RJ Barrett had a phenomenal game. I know I said the offense was stagnant, but RJ Barrett was that bright spot. Now, RJ Barrett dropped 27 points. He went 9 of 13 from the field, 5 of 8 from the three-point line, 4 of 6 from the free throw line. He had 6 rebounds, and he had the 4 turnovers. Like I said, he had a good game, but turnovers were still an issue for this team as a whole. He scored 8 points in the first quarter with 2 3-pointers. He's shown that, well, in the game, he's shown that he's gotten better being ambidextrous around the rim. He was able to finish with both hands. He had a great box out early in the fourth quarter that he was able to secure a rebound. And it was something that was notable because the way I was watching the game and, you know, just to see him get that position, and I think that was dope to see a guard go down there and do the dirty work in the paint. You know, especially when the Knicks are down, you like to see that type of energy, that type of intensity, and that type of fight. So for, you know, for us to be seeing that from RJ, who is going to be our star player for the next, you know, decade, I would hope. I think that's a good sign. You know, players on this team see, you know, the budding star putting in the work, and they're going to follow suit. He also had a nice cut later on in the game, and it was on a dunk that was assisted by IQ. I think that was nice to see him have the IQ to cut, get into the paint, no pun intended, get into the paint and finish with authority. He also hit a big 3 to get us back within single digits with just over a minute to go. But at that point, it was a little bit too late. And if I had to give somebody the title of player of the game, even though we lost, it would have to be RJ Barrett because he performed admirably, even in defeat. Next player we're going to talk about, who we talked about a little bit so far, is Julius Randle. He went 7 of 14 from the field, 4 for 7 from 3. He was 4 of 4 from the free throw line. He had 22 points, like I mentioned, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, and had 3 turnovers. Now, of those 5 assists, he got 3 of them, like I said, in the first quarter. So in the remaining 3 quarters, Julius Randle only got 2 assists. And if you look at Julius Randle and how this team has really excelled so far, it was when Julius Randle was moving the basketball, getting a lot of assists. In this game, he had less assists than he averaged last season. I would like to see him stick around the 6-7 assists per game, because then that way, you know, he's keeping his teammates involved and the ball's not sticking with him. I think when he came in the second quarter, the offensive flow completely changed, and we didn't have that same rhythm that we had in the first quarter. So Julius Randle, he has to continue to move the rock, trust in his teammates, keep his head up. And if he does that, I think this offense is going to be much better once we keep everybody involved and try to keep everybody in rhythm. So Julius Randle definitely has to get better and stop going ISO crazy out there. He had a few bad turnovers. I think he had a stretch in the second quarter where he turned the ball over, I think in 2 or 3 straight possessions. And then he also ended the possessions with 2 or 3 bad, you know, end of shot clock shots that are, you know, low percentage. And of course he didn't make them. And that's not really a brand of winning basketball. So next player we're going to talk about is Mitch. Mitch, I think, was solid Defensively, if I had to nitpick, there were a couple dunks that he was unable to convert. He did mention himself that he's got to get better with finishing with his conditioning. That'll come. But other than that, he was a beast on the boards. He had 12 rebounds, only had 6 points. If he were able to convert a couple of those easy dunks, he would have had a double-digit game, double-digit scoring game. I apologize. Mitch also had about 3 assists and 1 block. So Mitch was solid for the most part. We took him out to deploy the small ball lineup. We also saw how impactful and disruptive Mitch could be. There was a play, I forgot which quarter, but Mitch came in and in 3 consecutive possessions, he forced players to alter their shot, or he was able to block the shot, and he was able to convert those into some buckets on the opposite end of the court. One was his bucket, and I think Evan Fournier was able to convert a basket off of Mitchell Robinson's great defense on the other side of the floor. And that's what has really been our go-to, having our defense create offense for us. But in all honesty, it was the Toronto Raptors that was playing that type of game last night, and that's one of the major reasons we lost. Kemba scored 5 points at the end of the second quarter, and it helped end a dry spell for us, because if Kemba didn't knock down those 5 points at the end of the second quarter, then we very well could have entered the second half down. So luckily Kemba was able to knock down some points and end a Toronto Raptors run to end the second quarter, and at least give us a fighting chance throughout the rest of the game, even though we were unable to pull it out. So Kemba, he went 5 of 10 from the field, 3 of 6 from the 3-point line, and he had 15 points in total. Fournier, he had an average night offensively, a couple bad turnovers. He did get beat a few times on defense, but I think offensively he was still somewhat, he was at an average night, nothing crazy. He had 12 points, 5 of 13 from the field, 2 of 7 from the 3-point line, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 turnovers. Next, we're gonna get into IQ. IQ did not have a good night at all. He went 1 of 7 from the field, 1 of 6 from the 3-point line. He had 7 points. The majority of those came from the free throw line, the charity stripe. So hopefully Quis can figure it out, because you look at this roster, we're extremely deep, and we have players on this team that can play, as good or better defense than Quis. And you would think they'd be able to shoot way better than he's been shooting to start the season. So I hope Quis finds it. That way, he can start feeling a little bit better, get his confidence up. Well, I'm not gonna say get his confidence up. I don't know if his confidence is down, but I know I'd be stressing if I were to have started the season like this, knowing you got some dogs on the bench that are nipping at your heels. So hopefully Quis can get better. He did have 5 assists, so I will credit him for that. He had a nice pass to Obi. Can't remember if it was pick and roll or dribble handoff, but Obi was able to get free, and IQ found him in the paint for an easy finish. So that was one positive from IQ. Rose, he had an off night, didn't really give us too much out there. He had 4 points, 2 of 8 from the field, 0 of 2 from the 3-point line, 1 assist, 1 steal. So nothing crazy from Derrick Rose. He's gonna have off nights here and there. This was one of them. He was 0 of 2 from the 3-point line. That's something we've been, getting used to him knocking down that shot consistently. And tonight it wasn't the night for him. So hopefully he'll be able to rebound against the Pacers. Not overly concerned. Burks was average. He was okay. He didn't really, look for his shot too much and dribble the ball or dribble the air out the rock. So that was one positive. He had 5 points, 2 or 3 from the field, 1 of 1 from the 3-point line, and he had 1 steal, 1 rebound. Jericho Sims actually got some minutes too. He came in. I guess Taj Gibson wasn't doing it for Thibodeau, so he decided to go with Jericho Sims in that 4th quarter to start. One thing I didn't like about Jericho Sims is he looked a little bit like Nerlens Noel without the shot blocking, because he did have some difficulty catching some rebounds out there. So that's definitely something he's going to have to work on. But he's a young, late 2nd round pick. I'm not going to kill him. He's really supposed to be in the G League, getting better and working on his game. So hopefully he's able to do that as we get healthy and as Nerlens Noel returns. So you guys, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Once again, I'm Quis, host of Sports Vibes TV, and I'm out.